Okay, ratios and proportions. Does anybody know what a ratio is? It is a fraction. It can be a fraction. Is there another way you can write ratios? Anyone know? Evan?
One number and then a colon and then another number.
Good. So let's do a quick definition. So a ratio is a comparison of values and we can write it as a fraction. So I can write it as 1/2, or like Evan said, we can write it with a colon. In either situation, you would read it as 1 to 2. 1 to 2. I can even write that out. 1 to 2. What about a proportion? Does anyone know what a proportion is? No? So proportions are equal ratios. So for instance, I might have 1/2, and that is equal to or the same as 2/4. Why are those the same? If I can simplify, I can simplify 2/4 by 2, and then they have the same value of 1/2. You've probably seen proportions look something like this. Does that look familiar? And what we're not going to solve it yet, but what would we do to solve it? Cross multiply, absolutely. So you would multiply across, and we'll get there in a second. Okay. Questions so far? All right. Let's see. So I'm going to have you write this out. It's going to take a second. So a girls' soccer team won 10 games and lost 2 games. A boys' soccer team won 12 games and lost 3 games. So the first thing we're going to do is write a ratio for the girls' wins to the girls' losses. Write a ratio for the girls' wins to the girls' losses. Who can tell me what they think that ratio is going to be? The girls' wins to the girls' losses, Micah?
5 to 1.
Before we reduce it.
Or 10 over 2.
Okay, so let's start with 10/2. And then sure, that reduces to 5/1. Those are equal ratios. Everyone okay with that? Okay. I want you to write a ratio for the boys' wins to the boys' losses. So write a ratio for the boys' wins to the boys' losses. Someone else, what's the ratio before you simplify of boys wins to boys losses? 12 to 3, which reduces to 4 over 1. Okay? So my third question for you is, who has the better win ratio? Who is that? Go ahead. Who has a better win ratio? The girls. Why do the girls have the better win ratio?
Every 5 games they win, they lose 1.
Okay, so for every 5 games they win, they're only losing 1. Where the boys, they're going to lose 1 for every 4 games they win. So the girls have the better win ratio. Questions on that? This should all be relatively review for everyone. Okay. So let's okay, so simplifying ratios. So I'm going to give you how would I simplify this ratio?
Divide by 6.
Okay, so that gives me 1 over 2, right? Now, when you're dealing with units, sometimes they're going to cancel out, and in this case they do, okay? So really our final answer is just 1/2, because yards divided by yards is going to go away. Okay, let's look at, and here's why they're going to go away. So let's look at 2 quarts to 4 gallons. Does anybody know how many quarts are in a gallon?
8 or 4.
There are 4 quarts in a gallon. Okay? Now, in order for our units to kind of cancel out, we have to invert the next fraction. So Micah just told us there are 4 quarts to 1 gallon. Now I wrote it upside down because I want my units to cancel. If not, I have quart squared and gallon squared, and then it's all confusing. Okay, so you want it to cancel. So there are 4 quarts to every 1 gallon. So my quarts are going to cancel. My gallons are going to cancel. And now I have 2 really times 1 and 4 times 4. Is there anything else I can do before I multiply straight across? Anyone know? Cross cancel. So I can cancel, you can cancel up and down, and you can cancel diagonally. Okay, so I can either cancel here or I can cancel here. Doesn't matter. And in this case, it's going to be exactly the same. So if I divide by 2, this 2 becomes a 1. And let's just do it here. This 2 becomes a, or this 4 becomes a 2. Is there anything else up and down or diagonally that I can simplify? No. So I'm going to just multiply straight across. So 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 4 is 8. So you may want to write this down if you choose to. Does anyone know how many feet are in a yard? 3. So 3 feet in a yard. That may be helpful for your homework tonight. There are 3 feet in a yard. Do we know how many inches are in a foot?
12.
12 inches in a foot. Do we know how many hours are in a day? Okay. And I think that's all you're going to need to know. Okay, so let's actually solve some proportions. So those are simplifying ratios. Let's solve proportions. So we have x over 3 equals 10 over 15. And someone told us earlier to solve a proportion, we would cross multiply. So you are literally multiplying across. So x times 15, 15x, and then it equals, so 15x equals 3 times 10, 30. And how would I get x by itself? Divide by 15, which means x equals 2. Okay. Let me give you one that's a little harder. Okay. First step is still the same. You still cross multiply. So 3 times y is 3y. That's not the issue. Here's where people mess up. What is 15 times y minus 2? What is 15 times y minus 2? 15y minus 30. So what you need to do is 15 times that entire quantity, and there's where people mess up. Okay, they just want to multiply that 15 by that first number or variable, but you need to multiply it by everything. So this really is 3y equals 15y minus 30. What property did I use right there? The distributive property. Okay, now we can continue and solve. So I'm going to subtract 15y from both sides. I'm going to come over here, giving me negative 12y equals negative 30. And then if I divide by negative 12, does 12 go into 30 evenly? No, so you're just going to reduce. What does y equal? What would I reduce that to? You're going to leave it as a fraction. What would it reduce to? Negative 5 over 2? Positive, because a negative and a negative is a positive. 6 goes into 30 5 times. 6 goes into 12 twice. So it's going to be a positive 5 over 2. Okay, I want you to try this last one. Okay, so take a second and try this last one. Okay, so let's see. If we cross multiply, you should have 4 times x plus 5 equals 16 times x plus 2. Now, you don't have to write that step out if you know to distribute to both terms. Okay, so you can skip this step and go directly to 4x plus 20 equals 16x plus 32. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to subtract 4x, giving me 20 equals 12x plus 32. I'm going to subtract 32, giving me negative 12 equals 12x. And when you divide by 12, you end up with x equals negative 1.